Now what you get to do is take a chisel, and we're going to get rid of all this wood. So a chisel has two surfaces to it. It has the flat edge, and it has what's called the bevel or the angle. So I want you to watch how I'm holding it. I hold it like a pen almost, okay? And put it down on the wood like this with the flat of the chisel facing me, like this. Don't hold the chisel like this because you don't have any control like that. Hold it down here and don't get your fingers obviously under the blade. The rule in this shop is if you're using a chisel, your workpiece, which is this piece of wood, your workpiece has to be clamped down, okay? You cannot just, I don't ever want to see anybody chiseling like this where they're holding the piece of wood and they're chiseling like this because they'll get a nice big cut in their hand. So your workpiece is always clamped down or in a vise. Now, I just start hitting these things out of there, okay? And they'll come out, just a couple of hits and you can get rid of the bulk of it. Marking gauge line down here that you cut with the marking gauge on this side and on the other side. You'll take the chisel and with the flat of the chisel, so remember there's a bevel and a flat. So with the flat of the chisel facing the floor, you're just going to go down to that marking gauge line and watch what I do. I just turn the chisel in. I spin it in like this, and if you want to use a hammer you can, and I'm just going to tap it about halfway through the wood. Okay, about halfway through. And then I'm going to go from the other side. So from this side, I'll go down to the marking gauge line, put the chisel in there, and tap it, and the wood comes right out. Okay, and I can clean it up a little bit like this. So you see how I'm kind of shooting it through with the flat facing down and with my fingers behind the blade. Don't have your hand here and the chisel going toward your hand. That's a big no-no. Okay, and I'm pretty well done. That's it for this side. At this point, you can take your piece and just fit it in there and see how it fits. So that's a nice fit right there. Okay. You want to? Yeah, you can cut it there. Okay.
Yeah.
Does that keep falling off on you?
Yeah, it's okay though.
Yeah. Okay. So the next step. Now that's one side of the cut done. Okay. Now you're going to do the other side. To do the other side, just take this piece and you're just going to set it in here, and we're just going to mark. We're just going to mark it. So if this is being centered here, you would want this to be the same as that. But you know what? What you should do is you should start with boards. You should start with pieces that are a little bit longer than your design. So start with boards that are a little bit longer and then cut the joint, and after the joint's cut, then you trim these to length to get it perfect. Okay, so this is in here now, and I can mark. Basically, I can take a nice sharp pencil. I'm going to get a piece of sandpaper. Then you're going to take a nice sharp pencil. Here's a little tip. You can take a piece of sandpaper and use it as a quick pencil sharpener. And you're just going to make a mark in here and a mark in here like that. And again, I am not drawing all the way through. All I did was make two little marks like that. And now I take a square, because I know the square is 90 degrees, and I transfer those marks right across the width. Then I take my marking gauge, which is already set, and we're just going to repeat the process. So I mark it here, I mark it here. I did that very quickly. I want you to take your time with it because it takes a little bit of getting used to. Okay. So with the X, I'm going to get rid of the wood where the X is by cutting on the X side of both lines, okay, and leaving those pencil lines showing. Again, you cut on the backstroke, and then you can cut down. And cut down to the marking gauge line. Now I cut the other one. Down to the marking gauge line. And now with those two outside cuts made, now I do a series of cuts on the inside. and that's it. You can also knock the wood out of here by putting the saw in here and just bending the saw sideways like that, and the wood will come out for you. Now I take the chisel with the flat of the chisel facing the floor, I put it on the marking gauge line, and I spin the chisel in there like that, keeping my fingers behind it, and also not going through to the other side. And then once you've done that, you come to the other side. And if you want, you can use a hammer. Just tap that. Again, going to the marking gauge line. Give it a tap. And that's pretty well it. Now I'm going to keep the flat of the chisel down and just clean up the bottom. Like this. The bottom doesn't have to look perfect. It gets hidden when you glue up. And now I can try the pieces together. So you can take a piece of wood. If you really have to force it in there, then we'll make some adjustments. But this worked out fine. So I'll take the clamp off. Okay, and that's sort of how it should look. Okay, it's a nice fit. This one is maybe a little bit too tight, but it worked. Okay, and as for when you've got it looking the way that you want, then what you're going to do is just put a little bit of glue in here. Okay, get some glue in there, and you're going to clamp it down to a table. So when you clamp it down, I want you putting a piece of paper towel down just to separate the glue from the table. You'll put your top piece in, and if you need to encourage it in, just use a piece of wood like that. And now we're going to clamp it. So I'm going to clamp it to the table. Okay, and what I want you to do is put a piece of scrap board on top here before you put your clamp. That way you don't damage your piece too much. And you're going to separate. This is a good tip. If I just put this piece of block of wood there like that, if you had any glue coming out, then you're going to glue this to your project. So put a piece of paper towel there, put this piece of block in place, and you're going to glue it. Like that. And you can kind of rip the paper towel off just to make sure that everything looks good. If there's any glue in there, now's a good time to take a damp paper towel and clean that up. But damp it, get some water from the sink. And last thing you're going to check, just in case your joint is a little bit loose, the last thing you're going to check is square. So if you think it might be out of square, or if the joint's a little bit loose, then you can still move it around. Put the square here. Make sure that if you're trying to create a 90-degree corner, that it's perfectly 90. Now this is glued up. The glue's dry, and I'm going to take it out and I'm going to sand it. And so to sand it, if you have to get it flat, so if your surfaces are not quite level, then you can either use these boards here, or you can use the belt sander at the back. These have two different grits of sandpaper. This one's a little bit rougher. It says 50 grit here. This one's a little bit smoother. It says 80 grit. We're just going to put it on there, and this is a rough grit of sandpaper, but it's going to remove a lot of wood quickly, and then you can move to the smoother one here, like that. Okay, and you have to make sure that these surfaces are 100% flush. Feel it carefully to make sure there's no lips. And if you see a pencil mark there, that means that the sandpaper didn't hit the pencil mark, so you have to keep going. Okay? If you're going to do any machining, so if you're going to cut any curves at this point, then you would do that, and then you'll sand it up nicely, and you are done. So that is the half lap joint.